Okay. So my name is Carrie Valiant, and I'm the Program Coordinator for Illinois Guide by Your Side. This is Module 1 of the pre-training. We're going to go through sharing your story, making the first call, answering hard questions, and is this a deaf thing? All right, so before we get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation, I just want to kind of lay down the rules of the road, that this is a safe place to share and ask questions, that no question is stupid, and to remember to respect one another when you perhaps make a comment or a question is asked that may seem obvious to you. It may not be that way to all. And when we're talking about children who have a hearing loss, I may say deaf, and maybe you do not call your child deaf or like the term deaf, but if you hear that, just replace it with the word that you commonly use and that makes you feel comfortable. If you don't want to ask a question out loud, then please you can write it in the chat box or ask me later, email it to me. And then please tell us what you need. If you need a hug, not that I can do it over the phone or a break or something clarified, just tell me what you need, and we'll go from there. And this goes for every time that we are together training, your whole experience with me and the team. All right, so the first module, sharing your story. When would you share? You're only going to share if prompted by the family. We don't come right out and say, well, let me tell you how it went with me and Jack. It was a warm, sunny day on the 4th of July. No, that is not how we're going to go about our business with the families. We only share if the family asks us and if it could truly help connect with the family. Sometimes you sit down with a family and you're kind of struggling to get the conversation flowing, then maybe you might pick something from your experience to start the conversation. But other than that, you keep it simple and keep it short, and only if the family asks. So when you're sharing your experiences, whether it is from the very beginning or something that has recently happened, make sure that you have a point to your story. And make sure it's relevant to whatever the family is dealing with or is asking about. Also, don't assume what's true for you that is the same for others. I've been in many situations where the emotions that I felt at different times I had shared with the family, and their response was, well, that's not how I felt. And whether that is truly the case or, maybe they don't want to say that they're having those feelings, that's fine. But you kind of put a disclaimer then when you do share parts of your story is that, I remember feeling like this, or, in our case, this is how it went for our family. Now, this might not be always a typical situation or something to that manner where you're kind of saying that it might not happen to you or this might not be how you're feeling, but I remember feeling like that. Again, making sure your message is relevant to the situation, and is your timing right? When you're meeting with the family, are they in the right mindset? Are they open to listening and hearing, or are they just really struggling with the news and with everything that they're working with right now? And so even if you said anything to them, would they even actually hear it, or are they kind of like that deer in headlights look where they're just overwhelmed, exhausted, and just unsure? So with that, maybe just being someone for them to listen to them, or just help them get through what that specific need is that they might be experiencing. There was a referral that Karen had a long time ago through Choices for Parents, and referral came from professionals, and professionals kept remarking that this mom was just so unresponsive and not helping her child and not attending appointments and everything else that the mom should be doing but wasn't. And Karen talked to the mom and said, what is it that I can help you with right now? And the mom's like, I just need some diapers. And so what a family might be experiencing and what that professional or we may be perceiving and what truly is their need, might be two entirely different things. And until you help them get through what they're struggling with and what is holding them back or that hurdle at that time, everything else is kind of a roadblock for them. So keep that in mind. What is their agenda? What do they need to move ahead? Is your message culturally sensitive? So making sure that you're not saying something that would offend someone. Just pass the sniff test. We all the time talk about us being unbiased. Are the comments or experiences that you're sharing, are they unbiased? And that's what we kind of call the sniff test. Is your experience in your comments focused? And then one of the things that I think is a great tool is rehearsing your best moments, those stories that you have that really you feel will make a difference. Practice talking them out. Practice, saying them. Practice about what points you're going to make, and then actually open up your mouth and say them out loud. Because I know a lot of times before I start something new or before I make a call to a professional, I'll practice them out loud so I'm not tripping over my words when I'm actually in there in the moment. Not that we want to sound rehearsed, but we want to be comfortable with what's going to come out of our mouth. We don't want to stumble across our words. We don't want to say something accidentally. So ensuring that you're ready to go and that you'll get your point across. And of course, keep your story short, 3 to 5 max. And that being said, is that the focus is on the family, not on you and your family's story. So if you try to get your points across within that time frame, which is another reason for you to share and practice, because a lot of times when we get rolling into our story, emotions might start to come up, or we'll remember other things, and then before you know it, we're tossing in all these different experiences when our first intention was just to share about how we got the hearing aids to stay on. So again, keeping it simple, keeping it short, keeping it to the point. So when you're looking at working with a family, and you might have a situation where the conversation is kind of dead, or mom, you give her a call and she's like, you know what, I'm feeling pretty good, or things are fine, they're okay. What is mom really saying? And I say mom only because 9 times out of 10 we do talk to mom and only mom. But keep in mind that you might come across a situation where you're talking to grandma, dad, or perhaps somebody who takes care of the child, like a nanny or so forth. So these are great sentences to kind of start that conversation going, or to dig a little bit deeper. Mom says to you, things are fine. I don't really need anything. Okay. Well, how has Dad reacted? Or mom seems quiet, and short yes no answers kind of thing. Simply ask, well, how are you feeling? How are you feeling today? How did you feel when you first found out about your child's hearing loss? What was the situation like? Where were you? Who did you tell after you found out? What was that conversation like? This is key when I do intakes with family. I can't tell you how many times a new family will share that they're frustrated because the extended family doesn't get it, and the extended family is questioning the actual hearing loss, or doesn't see the need to use sign language or communicate or practice maybe some of the things that they had learned at therapy to help the child be a successful oral child, or keeping the hearing aids on. They don't see a point, So a lot of times that is a key point to kind of get somewhere with when you're talking with them. When when you're working with the family and you might have a situation where you go to their home and you're expecting to meet with mom and see little baby Joe, and you find out the night before or maybe the day of when you call to confirm again that you're going to be coming, that they're going to have a couple other family members there. Okay, well, be prepared. I've had parent guides walk into situations where they got there and there was 20 other people in the room. And that may happen, but, you got to trust in yourself. You got to trust that you've earned this position. You've earned your time as a parent. Your child is a WASC. They're successful, and that you can do this. And so be prepared for those situations. You may have a situation where another family member calls you and asks if, to talk to you and if they have concerns. And what I would do is I'd kind of play that one by ear. You want to make sure that you're not going to be put in the middle. So, for instance, we've had situations where grandma feels mom isn't doing enough. So grandma tries to get the parent guide in the middle to talk to the mom to say, you need to step up to the plate. So if that was a situation that comes into play, perhaps you would suggest meeting all of you at the same time to sit through and talk through it. Now, by no means are we counselors, but maybe you could kind of start facilitating conversation and then sharing some of the things that you have felt or you experienced with both of them at the same time. And then kind of letting, this person who may not think that the responsible parent is doing what they're supposed to be doing, but maybe sharing too that, I felt overwhelmed. Sometimes I felt like I needed to take a time out, and if that's the case or not. But then maybe getting hopefully a little light bulb to go on in grandma's head saying that, it's just too much right now, and if anything, they need your support, and saying that obviously in an appropriate way. If you're working with mostly mom but dad calls you, I'd say that that's fine. When it comes to situations where maybe mom and dad are not living together and mom doesn't like dad, then that gets a little tricky. But any of those things, when they come up, you kind of take it as it comes, because I don't hear of those situations very often. So I'd be surprised if it would happen. And if it does, there are a couple different things. If a family contacts you, one of the things that Andrea does is she does not answer her phone when it comes through with a number that she doesn't know. She will allow it to go to voicemail. And the reason why she does that is she has an opportunity to listen to the message and gather her thoughts before she actually talks to them and has an idea of what their needs are. So that's one thing that you can do. So then you won't be put in a situation of grandma calling and you're now stuck on the phone and you can't really think of an appropriate response. Another thing that you can do is you can always say, if there was a situation where you did answer it and you were kind of caught off guard, say, you know what, let me take a moment to think about this and let me get back to you. What's a number to call you at or to reach you at? Or you could say, I'm about to head out the door. I'd really like to talk to you more about this. How can I reach you? Whatever you feel that you could have a smooth transition without shutting her down or creating an uncomfortable moment, but that would give you time to either think about it some more or contact me. Okay? So, like I said, when you're sharing your story, it's not the same for everyone. So, well, this is how it went in our family, but every family is different. You're going to have to figure out what works best for your child and family. And that, for a lot of times for me, when a family comes into the program, they'll be like, well, is your child implanted? Well, are they successful? Oh, I hate the word successful because what they think successful is and what I think successful are is probably two different things. So that's a tricky one. But, if it comes down to implanting and, when were they implanted? Well, my son he had 3 surgeries because he was re-implanted. So, again, that's where I go in with the disclaimer because I don't want to scare them away from an implant because my son's experience is not exactly the same for all, obviously. But also I want them to know I want to be upfront with them. I don't want to lie to them. So I want to kind of put a disclaimer before it. All right, so a little role playing. I think there's no questions. Yeah. So with this, Lucia and Michaela, if you would actually click over right now and get off of mute, I guess. And I'm going to pause the recording, so we won't record you, so you won't be nervous about being forever recorded. Excellent. So making the first call. So basics. Before you get started, and I do this even when I make professional calls, just take a deep breath. Think of what you want to say. Remember why you do this. You know, you have a purpose, and you're here to help others and empower others. Reread the intake information, the form, whether that came from me or that was what you've done with the family the first time you talked to them. Remember, especially the child's name, if you can bring that up in conversation, it just makes that conversation that much more personable. Any issues they might have. When I do an intake form, on the very back of the form there's a bunch of blank lines, and anything that pops up from the family, that key concerns, I'll jot them down on those lines. So look there to see what really has sparked the family right now and what they're really searching for. Make sure you speak clearly and slowly. Always ask if it's a good time to talk, and make sure you pause to give them a chance to speak and share anything that they might be thinking about or wanting to ask. Okay. Remember, too, a lot of times you're the first person they're going to meet that has a child with hearing loss. More often than not, many of these families have not been in touch with other families. They haven't had the opportunity to kind of get this golden nugget that we are. So when you're starting off, introducing yourself, that first call, a lot of times when you say, I'm from Guy by Your Side, or I'm a parent guide, those words are foreign to the family. They may have heard it once, maybe twice, but other than that, they don't know if you're selling them a Kirby vacuum or, you know, wanting to come out and clean their carpets. They're not quite sure. So if you start off with, I'm a parent of a child with hearing loss, a lot of times that'll pique their attention. And they'll be like, oh, okay, I want to listen to you. I know that you're not trying to ask me, you know, to pay my bill or to sell me something. And then you can continue on and say, I'm also a parent guy with Guy by Your Side. You may have spoken to Carrie the other day, and she matched me with you, and she gave your information to me. Or you could say, I received your information, so if it's something where you're doing the intake and we receive the referral from a hospital, or we receive the referral from maybe Choices for Parents or early intervention, you could say, I received your information from your early intervention office. They had asked me to give you a call because you'd like to talk to another parent that has a child with hearing loss. Keep it light, keep it simple, easy to understand words. Don't go too crazy. A lot of times all these terms that we use, amplification, communication, and all those things get a little confusing for families at the beginning. So when you ask, does your child use any amplification, you know, break it down. Does your child wear hearing aids? Do they have an implant? Or are they using anything to hear right now? And see what they say, keeping it simple. The last thing we want to do is make the families feel uncomfortable because we are talking above them. And always, always, hi, my name's Carrie, and I'm a parent of a child with hearing loss. I was asked to give you a call. Is this a good time? Very simple, very fluid, happy, because they want to hear that we're happy, that this issue and these things that they're feeling right now, this stress or whatever it may be, is not going to be forever. All right. Don't tackle everything that first call. That's the worst mistake you can make. When we were first starting out, parent guides would get stuck, and not necessarily stuck being the right word, but they would have that first call be over an hour because they would try to tackle all the family's problems that first time. And what they had found is that then after that had happened, the family didn't even want to meet with them in person. Because, you know what, their most pressing question of how do you keep the hearing aids on was answered. So why do they need to meet with you now? So simple things like that, keeping it simple, keeping it short. Can I set up a time with you? Again, giving them options, and also letting them know that you're not just meeting them in person to meet them in person to put a face with a name. You're meeting them in person to give them more information. A lot of times that will really sucker them in, if sucker is the right word. But that will kind of take it over the edge. And they'll be like, oh, you have more for me? Because, again, families are at that stage where they want all the information that they can get to help them process. Many of them are like this. Not all of them, but many are. And don't worry, the resources that you have to show them, you know, we will definitely be talking about those. So no fear. You're not going to be going out blind and just bringing out stuff that you have. We definitely have like a little first meeting kind of chart, if that makes any sense. And I believe that's also in your spiral-bound notebook. And again, using their child's name definitely makes it personable, makes it to them like there's something special to you, okay? And it reminds them that it's about their child. It's not about them. It's about their child. And, you know, when they start to talk about their child, hopefully they'll soften up a little bit. Yes, so underneath in your spiral-bound notebook under Guide's Guide, the very last sheet is the guide's first visit interview sheet. So there's a little checklist at the top of things to remember to bring. There's a couple questions that you can ask and to kind of start conversation going. Maybe some of them you already know. Different things to ask them that we need for data purposes if it might have not been collected during the intake, on the intake form. And then, you know, like the hearing loss spiral-bound notebook, the children and hearing loss finder, you should have one of those. If you don't, let me know, and I will contact Karen at Choices for Parents. You should have one both in English and both in Spanish. They used to be in a binder form. Now they are in a spiral-bound notebook. If you don't have the latest ones, let me know. I'll have Karen send you a copy of each so that you will have those to bring into the family's home. You will not leave it with the family. Hopefully, either A, when you do the intake form, you can ask them if they've received it, and if not, you can send the request to Karen, and she can mail one out to them. Karen would need their name, their address, phone number, email if they have it, child's name and date of birth, and then whether they want it in English or Spanish, and it is free for families. So then you would just email that information to Karen. If you could CC me on that, that would be wonderful. And then she would mail it out to them. And hopefully before you get to that first visit, they would have it in hand too, so you can kind of walk and point some stuff out within the notebook. If they don't have it when you go through it, you can just show them yours and tell them that theirs will be coming soon. Another thing that I will have Andrea send you is the Book of Choice. That is also in English and Spanish. I'm not sure if Andrea has both English and Spanish on her at this point, but if she does, I'll have Andrea send you a copy of each. And again, there's specific sections of this book that I feel certain stories touched me or make a difference. Now, with that being said, if there's other sections in the Book of Choice that you find more relevant to this family or that speak to you more, certainly point those out. They're just conversation starters for you to use. And then, again, some follow-up questions, an area to take notes, how long you were there, and so forth. Okay? So, and if you didn't have your spiral-bound notebook, out at that point. You can go through that later. Other phrases to use. I remember some suggestions or questions I had when my child was diagnosed. I remember wondering if they would be able to drive a car. I remember, how would they be able to go and see a movie? And it's funny that I worried about that when my son was only a few weeks old, but those were the things that were, I was questioning, I was thinking about. Another thing that you can use, especially if you're finding a hard time of the family committing to meeting with you, say you're going to be in the area. Even if you might not, a lot of times they feel like they might be putting you out. So you know what? I'm going to be out. I know that it's usually easier for me to talk to you on Tuesdays, and I just happen to be out in your area next week Tuesday. Would that be okay? You just let me know what time you're available, and then I'll see what I can do I'll let you know if I'm available to meet at the time. Something as simple like that. But again, they think that they're bothering you. Another thing, too, is, again, if the family seems like they're good, that they don't need anything, you can ask them, have you heard about Hands of Voices? Have you had a chance to visit our Illinois Hands of Voices website or attend any of the events? Have you seen one of their brochures? And just maybe share some of the things that you know about Illinois Hands of Voices, whether that's Mom's Night In or the roller skating events or summer picnics or different things like that they do. If they're a member, they get events usually either free or reduced rates, and then they get an issue of the Communicator each month. Now, the Communicator is not in Spanish, but what I find is typically Mom has a handle on English, and I don't know if I just find that because maybe the ones I talk to are like that, and the ones that don't, Maria or Sanaya has talked to, I'm not quite sure, but just kind of sharing. So those are just some other phrases that you can use. So, role playing. Lucy, you're up first. I'm going to pause it. All right, so next part is answering hard questions and unbiased answers. So some of those scary moments that we may have, or uncomfortable moments maybe. So always think back and remember what it was like for you at the very beginning. I know, for me, the very beginning was over 11 years ago. So I don't have the same emotions. I don't have the same feelings as I did 11 years ago that these families may be having and experiencing. So sometimes we just got to get back to that spot and realize that, back then we didn't see the yellow brick road. We didn't see what we see now. We haven't lived what we have lived now. And that's the same as for these families that we're serving. Where did your questions from? What questions did you have? Sharing again at the beginning, the first thoughts that I had about my son was, would he be able to drive, and who's going to go to prom with him? And I know those sound so bad and so selfish, but I knew nothing about hearing loss. There was nowhere in our family, not expected. And, for me, driving was a freedom. I was a social butterfly, and I loved all the dances. So I think that's where my mind immediately went. So, taking it back to that place, what were your first initial gut reactions, your thoughts? Were you afraid? Did you want somebody to actually offer you hope, or would you have been better off about somebody helping you laugh about something and getting your mind off of it for a little bit? Were you looking for practical suggestions? I know the biggest thing that I had after Jack got hearing aids was, how am I going to keep these things from squealing, and how am I going to keep them on his head? He keeps taking them off, and this is so frustrating. They say that he needs to wear them as much as possible, but, how many times a day do I have to put them in? And, oh, no, they said that they're going to ship me the tubes, and that means I'm going to have to cut them and put them on there. I don't know if I can do that. Simple things like that back then were huge. Sometimes you just had thoughts and, did I really want an answer to is he going to go to prom? Or, did I just want to let those thoughts out so I can move on to the next step? So keeping that in mind, that not everything that comes out of the family's mouth needs an answer or needs a response. A lot of times parent guides have shared that the family will start to share, kind of like stop, almost as if they're posing a question, and the parent guide just sits there. And they let that thought, that moment happen, and then that family will continue on. And it's just a matter of letting them release it. A lot of times, too, when I talk with families at the initial intake, I share with them, I said, we're a safe place to share your thoughts, to share what you're thinking. We're not going to judge you. We're not going to, call the audiologist or your mom to say, what you just said to me. We're here to listen and let you know that we understand. We're in the same spot. And sometimes that's just a relief for them that they don't need their sensors on. So hopefully that will help them become comfortable. So just like those fancy new pair of shoes that you just love because they're so darn cute and you got to steal when you bought them, but they're so uncomfortable the first time you wear them and you're thinking, why did I do that? It's the same thing when you're working with families. You might question why you're doing this. You might question if you're doing the right thing, saying the right thing. Trust me, it will become comfortable. And it will be, you'll start to see similarities amongst conversations and amongst families. But with that also being said, don't assume that every family of a 6-week-old is going to react the same way. So give it some time. It'll all work out. All right, role playing. All right. I am going to pause the recording again. All right, so this last part for tonight's training is called Is This a Deaf Thing? And that's primarily a lot of times on our journey we'll ask, is this because they have a hearing loss or is this because they're 2 or 22? So this kind of addresses some of those things that come up and a common question by families. So, like I said, a common question asked by families, that's my son Zach, and I just had to take a picture of his crazy hair. And no, it's not because he's deaf. It's because he woke up and didn't use a comb. All right. So why do we ask if it's a deaf thing? Well, our child may be acting different, unexpected. They may be acting untraditionally. Maybe socially there's something that's off, or they just may be acting inappropriate. And so when those situations arise, that is commonly when that question will peak up. So deaf is different, but what should be the same as their hearing peers? Well, they should have uncompromised parental love, devotion, acceptance, caring, along with higher expectations. Just because they're deaf doesn't mean that they can't achieve it. They should feel like they have a strong support system, and we should always be honest with them. What is different? Communication's different. Whether that's sign language or oral, there's still some breakdowns, and it's not typically on the same playing field. Social dynamics are a little bit different. Education, even though our child's mainstreamed with their hearing peers, or if that's the case, they may utilize a hearing itinerant, or they may be pulled out for speech therapy. So even though it's the same, it's still different. Extracurricular activities, using maybe a interpreter, or having to have the coach wear an FM, or explain to the coach about your child's hearing loss and how they can make it a better experience for them. And opportunities, both positive and negative. There have been opportunities where Jack's had, and he's had them because of his hearing loss. receiving a stipend to help pay for an iPad because of his hearing loss and because it can help him through some of the things that he needs or, could benefit him with his hearing loss. Going to camp in Maine last summer, again, because of his hearing loss. But then there's also some other situations, being in the pool without his implants on. He can't hear. He can't play Marco Polo with his friends. So, there are ups and downs to all of this, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. So, why is it different? Well, communication, again, equal and effective access, or sometimes being deprived of communication. Maybe if they utilize ASL and they're in an environment where nobody else knows how to sign, or maybe they're an oral communicator, but the kids are whispering and they can't pick that up. The information exchange, seeing and hearing it, partaking in it. Hearing peers can hear things that our children may not pick up. Again, the whispering or information, sounds from the environment that our child might be missing out on because they're concentrating on the conversation that may be taking place, or staring off, focusing on something else, and they're blocking everything else out. So what do we all want? There's my man on his first day of school last year. Well, we want a WASC, a well-adjusted, successful kid. They're a result of good decision. And remember, success. My success may be different from yours or your child's and what you envision for them, but to me, he's successful, and that's all that matters. It doesn't make a difference what anyone else thinks. If he is proud of who he is and he's successful and he can lead an independent life, and that's what I find successful, then great. An effective education, again, early identification, they have communication access, they're achieving base standards, they're socially and academically successful. Whatever I have as my levels in all those categories, then again, he's a WASC. A strong family, we're productive, we communicate with our child in the mode that they use, and we have a healthy attitude towards deafness and hearing loss. We are not, over-emotional. Not necessarily that's a bad thing, but we've moved on from those initial stages, and we know that the hearing loss is not the end of the world. And there's much beauty in it. So the D thing filter. So the deaf thing. When that question arises, we want to look, okay, well, what is typical? What is age appropriate? We all know about the terrible twos. If they're two, is it because of the terrible twos that they're behaving this way, or is it because of the hearing loss? Has there been a communication breakdown, and that child can't communicate because they don't have the tools to communicate, and that's why the behavior is coming about, or is it because of that age? So here is a website that you can go to see what typical age-appropriate behavior and development is. You should always, no matter what degree of hearing loss, you should always expect them to achieve typical milestones. Don't ever say, well, that's okay, it's because, they're deaf. It doesn't have to happen now. If we don't hold the bar high, then how do we expect them to do that throughout their life? If they're not achieving typical developing language or appropriate behavior, then question it. Why not? Is it the communication access? Is it amplification? What's going on? What else might be standing in the way? And then whatever that is, get to it. Intervene. Do something about it. Don't just wait until the next time they get evaluated. Don't just wait, for somebody else to say something. Take a stand and make a choice. Look at it. So communication looping. And this is a great way for you in any situation, whether it's with our children or working with families. You're going to have communication. Okay? That family or that person is going to soak in that information, and they're gonna put some meaning behind it. Okay? You always want to check with your children. You would reward if they understood what they were saying, and then you want to also make sure that they understood what you were saying. Okay? So clarifying. So when you're working with a family, you would ask a clarifying question if you felt like they did not understand what you were saying. Or you would clarify with them. So they've communicated with you, and they've said so much, and then it comes down to, your turn to speak. You could say, so what I hear you saying is that you're concerned that he's going to be picked on at school. And go from there and see if that's truly the concern and see what else they need to share. And in the end, testing for comprehension. So the self-administered D-thing, filter. So when we're looking at, is it a deaf thing? Okay, here are some categories and then some points about them. So the first one, how am I interpreting what I'm seeing in my child? Is my child sending signals that they're frustrated? Or is it because something's uncomfortable right now or somebody's bothering them? Are the stereotypes affecting me? Deaf and hard of hearing toddlers are hard to potty train, like I said, and other deaf myths. Number 3, how do I explore my child's understanding of their world? Have I asked them, what do you think the problem is, or other leading questions? Again, clarifying the situation. Do we talk about how they feel, or how others feel? Do they have language even to describe feelings? That's a huge part for our children. And if they don't have the language, then do they have the tools to point out feelings, maybe like a picture board or something? Am I overprotecting? This is so hard, letting them go, letting them stand on their own 2 feet, being that helicopter mom, because you feel that because they're hearing loss, they might not get it. They might not be able to achieve it, or whatever it might come down to. So letting them go up and order their own meal at McDonald's, and it might take 3 times of them saying it or trying to communicate it, but letting them figure out what tools they need in order to be successful in doing so. Do I have a model for parenting a deaf and hard of hearing child? So again, coming from an all-hearing family, I don't know what it's like to be deaf myself. So have I spoken with a deaf adult? Have I had the opportunity to introduce my child to a deaf adult or a deaf mentor? Again, stepping outside of that box, realizing that we don't have all the answers, and that's a perfect person for you to ask, is this a deaf thing? Or how can we get past this? Do I know that the message from the Girl Scout leader or Sunday school or coach is really getting through to my child? Again, are there communication accommodations in place if necessary? And what environments are challenging? And as the older they get with those communication accommodations, they've got to realize that they've got to set their own doctor appointments, and they've got to make sure that those things are in place for themselves, that mom's not always going to be calling and setting the appointment when they're sick, and that if they need an interpreter, that they need to know what steps they need to do to request and get an interpreter there for them if needed. If my child is school-aged, have we ensured full and effective communication access to academics or extracurricular activities based on their mode of communication? Are their teachers qualified and prepared to meet their needs? Do they have peers or teachers whom they can communicate with directly? Does my child have real friends with whom they genuinely and confidently communicate with? So by age 7, real friendships emerge between children and their friends. They create friendships. And, by that age, has that happened? Do they have somebody that they call a best friend and that they want to communicate with? And if they do, are they able to communicate with them? Do they have the tools set up in place that they don't need mom or dad to step in? Number 9, the school's calling and they think your child could have an attention deficit problem or behavior issues. Is it, again, listen to communication access? Or is it because they're trying to look like they're the bad kid in the class because it's cool? Or are they perhaps acting up because they don't want to take a test, or they don't want to be pulled out to have the test read to them independently? Are other things happening? And knowing what tools that you can use to, find out what the core of the problem is. And 10, have we considered where there could be gaps in our child's social learning? What's my plan to address the risk of to my child's emotional development? So, are we ready? Have we prepared our children? Are our eyes open to truly how our child is performing? Are we just letting things skate by, hoping that they correct themselves? So, in truth, all kids, even award-winning, crown-wearing kids, will experience some struggles and strain whether they hear normally or not. Normal hearing does not ensure social success, academic achievement, or comfortable communication with family in the world. If you're a hearing parent or professional, ask yourself if you've ever faced challenges on these fronts. Our personalities play a big part in how we move through these situations and grow or shrink from the experience. So consider how the child's personality is factoring into the dynamic. In a perfect world, we see a multifaceted individual emerging who is the sum of all their parts, including but not limited to their ears, hands, or their voice. And that child is going to rock this world. One of the things that I recently shared in a presentation was that our children need to realize, especially socially, and this is something, too, when working with families, a lot of times that social piece comes into play and that social question comes into play, that the friends that we have now are most likely not the friends we've had in kindergarten, and that friendships take time to form, and you need to grow and nurture them and keep them as friends, and that it wasn't easy for us either, and that we lived and learned from our experiences. Because right now that they see the friends that you have and that you communicate regularly, they probably don't see you arguing with those friends or having bad moments, so that they think that this is the way friendship should be. When in truth, it's not always that easy. And so we need to share those moments with them and allow them to understand that it takes a little work, but it'll work out. All right, so any questions? I'm going to pause, or actually I'm not going to pause the recording. Any questions? And then we got the post-test question.
No questions on my part.
Okay. All right. Well then, let's move on. Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to question number 1, same as you did at the beginning. You should always share your family story, true or false. Question number 2, keeping your family story to less than 10 minutes is suggested, true or false? Question 3. The first call with a family should mainly enable you to A, find out what's really bothering them, B, introduce yourself and set up an in-person visit, or C, tackle all their questions. Okay, question 4. When working with families, it helps to remember A, how you felt when you first learned about your child's hearing loss, B, what helped you move ahead, C, experiences you had both positive and negative, experiences from other families you know had experienced, or E, all of the above. Question 5. Sometimes we ask, is this a deaf thing when our child is acting A, unexpectedly and or untraditionally, B, inconsiderate and or selfish, C, socially unsynced and or inappropriate, D, impolite and or rude, E, A, and C, F, all of the above. All right, question 6. Communication and education do not set a deaf child apart from their hearing peers. True or false? 7, WASC equals a well-adjusted, successful kid. True or false? 8, communication looping is communicating, receiving, clarifying, and testing for comprehension. B, something we should do when working with families. C, something done to make sure all amplification is working correctly. And D, answers A and B, or E, all of the above. All right, excellent. I'm going to stop the recording.